What is up, everyone? This is 2ZZ-GE. In this video I will be putting together the timing chain cover gasket, or as I guess I should say the timing chain cover back onto the 2ZZ-GE engine. And I actually forgot to record this footage in the first area, but before you do anything else when installing the components back on, make sure to hit these with a hammer. So what these are, I don't know the proper name to them. I think they're called slide dowel pins. I'm not too sure. I don't know the exact name, but what you want to do is hit them with the cover facing downwards onto the floor. So you're gonna make them go out from the engine, if that makes sense. By doing this, you're moving these dowel pins so that installation of the power steering pump will be so much easier. I learned the hard way. I didn't do these, and when I had the engine already assembled and everything, the cover back on the engine, the power steering pump was hard to get back on. But I just want to let everyone know before you start putting like the RTV on the timing chain cover gasket and whatnot, but just to do this first before anything else. Go ahead and raise up your engine because you want to get it at a very good height so that the top bolt on the 2ZZ engine clears when you put the timing chain cover back on. And you want to put this Toyota seal packing in 4 areas. You want to put them on each side where the head meets the block, so where like the head gasket goes. And we gotta finish right here putting some. Not sure why it's taking me a while to do, but it is. And then we do the bottom portion of the block. So you're gonna need 4 areas. Trying to put a lot. It doesn't need that much. It just needs a little bit. And yeah, just put a little bit. You don't need to go to town with it. And make sure you put some right here where I think this is where one of the engine mount bolts goes to the block of the engine. Just if you put a lot, just wipe it off a little bit. Just wipe it off. Don't leave it all there. And let's see. Oh, yep, moment of truth. Putting the timing chain cover back on. As you can see, I'm pointing out where the seal packing goes. And with the engine raised up, it should be very simple to just slip right on the timing chain cover. You can also remove that long stud, but I don't have the proper Torx socket to remove it. So if you don't have it, you can also lift the engine and you will clear from the frame of the vehicle to this bolt, so you can slip right in the timing chain cover. It's not an issue. Done it multiple times, but I will eventually pick up a Torx socket set. And yeah, you want to tighten these 3 three 12mm bolts for the timing chain cover, and those you want to torque down to 14 foot-pound. Yes, 14 foot-pound. It is 3 12mm bolts. These are very, very important to get torqued. You do not want to over torque them either. And yeah, now we're gonna put the 10mm bolts all throughout the timing chain cover, and those are gonna be torqued to 8 foot-pounds. Yes, there's a couple of them. Just remember where they all go. It's really simple. It's not too hard to forget, or it's really hard to forget. It was pretty easy. Just remember where all them go. Don't forget one either. You forget one, or you forget to torque one, you're gonna leak oil. So yeah, these are torqued at 8 foot-pounds. Yep. And still continue installing them. There's quite a few of them, but make sure you don't lose any. Put them in like an old baggie or something, that way you don't lose them. Clean them up as well so they slip right in very easy. And I think that's gonna be it. Or gosh, how many is there? There's quite a few, but yeah, just torque them down. Make sure you torque these down. Very, very important stuff. And what am I doing here? Is this that lonely 10mm one? Yeah. So what was going on in that last section was that 10mm, the one that had threads all the way to the top. Make sure it goes into that one. It's only one. And here I am putting the motor mount bracket. That all those four 14mm bolts, you want to torque them down to 36 foot-pound. Oh, and that last one for the timing chain cover, the one that had the threads all the way to the top, make sure that one is torqued down to 8 foot-pounds as well. Yes, that one. That's the one I forgot to mention. So this is the one that has the threads all the way to the top. Make sure it goes to that one, all the way to the top of the head bolt, like this one. You see how that one has threads all the way to the top of the head? So those for the water pump. So here we are putting the water pump back on, and you want to torque down all the 10mm bolts to 8 foot-pound. And yes, you do have those two 10mm bolts that have the threads all the way to the head. Make sure you put those in the correct holes, because if you don't, if you put a long one in one of those, you're gonna crack the cover for sure. And here we are putting the thermostat back on. Make sure that little peephole is at the very top. That's how the service manual tells you to install it. So make sure you install it like that. Here we are moving the two 10mm nuts. Those are going to be torqued down to 80 inch-pound. And yeah, as I said, position it to the top. Here we are putting the thermostat housing back on. It's a little dirty, but gives the engine some character. Yeah, putting that back on. I have seen these fail, so might as well change it. And then here we are putting that crank position sensor. It is only held down by one 10mm bolt, and the 10mm bolt for the bracket. Both are torqued down to 80 inch-pound. And please replace the O-ring on the dipstick for the oil. It always leaks oil from there. Here's the old one. It's really like messed up and flat compared to the good one. It's like 80 cents. It's only held on by a 12mm bolted dipstick tube, and it's really easy to swap out. It's just a rubber O-ring. And here we are going to reset our timing chain tensioner. Just put a little bit of oil on it so that way it doesn't go in dry. And once you put some oil on it, you want to push down on this tab, and it should be able to slide right down. Very easy. And then just hook it. Yep, there it is. It's reset. So now we go to our 2ZZ engine, and it should go in. This only goes in one way, so you can't really put it in wrong. And torque down the two 10mm nuts to 80 inch-pound. And here we are putting in the belt tensioner. Yes, it's really easy. So the nut is torqued down to 21 foot-pound, and the bolt is torqued down to 74 foot-pound. The nut is a 12mm, and the bolt is a 17mm. Very easy stuff. Don't forget these torque settings. They are very important for these components on the engine. Yep, there it is. It's installed. Very shiny and very clean. Squeaky clean, man. Yep. I used my Harbor Freight ratcheting open end wrench for the 17mm one. And here we are gonna torque the crank pulley. That one is torqued down to 87 foot-pound. Yes. So what I'm doing here is I did a counterclockwise rotation on the crank pulley bolt until I heard a pop noise. Usually that means that the plunger for the timing chain tensioner is released. So after you hear that, turn it clockwise to fully release that tensioner. It's very important. And here we are about to torque down our water pump pulley. 10mm bolts. Those are at 11 foot-pound. I don't have the proper tool to hold the pulley, but if you use this Harbor Freight needle nose plier, it should be able to do the job correctly. And here we are installing the 12mm bolts for the AC compressor. Those are torqued down to 18 foot-pound. Yes, all three of them. Here I am using my Harbor Freight ratchet open end wrenches. Really cool tool. I love using these tools. Should have picked these up a long time ago, but I didn't. Just recently I got them. And yep, gonna put my radiator hose from the thermostat housing to the lower portion of the radiator. Yeah, make sure it's correct. Then we go to install our generator, aka the alternator. And though you have two 12mm bolts, one on the top and one for the bracket, both are going to be torqued down to 18 foot-pound. And then you have the lower 14mm one, which is torqued down to 39 foot-pound. Yep. Make sure you torque them down properly. Don't leave anything loose, because these are important things to the engine. After you've done this a couple of times like I have, this is actually my 6th time doing this timing chain tensioner job, or the timing chain cover job. You really don't need to torque anything down if you already got the hang of it. I've already done this multiple times with no complaints or no comebacks. And yeah, just go ahead and reinstall all the harnesses and whatnot for those AC compressor and the knock sensor, I believe, the crank pulley set, the crank pulley, and all that stuff. Just put it back together. That 10mm nut for the AC or for the generator is also 80 inch-pound. Yep. Make sure you connect everything. These are all important pieces to the puzzle. And yep, put them back on the brackets as well. They just click right in place. Double check everything. And here we are installing the power steering pulley, power steering pump, I guess you could say. Those are torqued down to 27 foot-pound, the nut and bolt for the power steering pump. And as I said, you need a wrench and a ratchet with the socket to properly do this. You need to hold it from one side as you tighten it from the other side, or it will just keep spinning on you. Very important stuff. And here we are installing the lower what is this, lower power steering pump reservoir. Yes, it's the line for the reservoir. I remember I told you guys to remove it to get more space for the job. It's really simple. It's only held on by a 12mm bolt. This 12mm bolt, you torque it down to nine. Did I just say night? Oh my gosh, I'm probably remembering my favorite Sega Saturn game, Nights into Dream. But as I was saying, 9 foot-pound. So yes, the 12mm bolt that holds on to this line to the power steering pump. And here I am installing that one bracket that holds on to the lower power steering line, the metal one or aluminum one, whatever you want to do. It's held on by a 10mm knot. Just torque it down to 80 inch-pound. And here we are installing the actual motor mount. Yep, we're getting places already. Engine mount. Yep. These are all torqued down to 38 foot-pound. You have the three 14mm bolts on the black section. And yeah, that's the one that I'm doing. This one is very, very delicate. I recommend doing it all by hand first, or finger tight. And yeah, they're all torqued down to 38 foot-pound. Even the two nuts that go on the lower portion, you will see me installing them in a bit. Yep, these two nuts right here, those two. So all of them, they're all 14 millimeter, the two nuts and the 5 bolts, and they all get torqued down to 38 foot-pound. Don't forget, don't want to leave this one loose. It's your motor mount. And let's see, what else am I doing? The ground wire. Yes, don't forget to put this ground wire back to where it belongs. It goes to the lower 10 millimeter bolt on the power steering pump reservoir, or power steering reservoir fluid. Yeah, it's a 10 millimeter bolt, and here I am reconnecting my power steering fluid reservoir. Jeez, I'm not saying stuff correctly tonight, man. And yeah, using my Harbor Freight needle nose pliers, then reattaching that power steering hose. You have 2 of them to reattach, that lower one and then that top one that goes to the reservoir. Don't forget to put them all back and make sure they're all tight and snug, because sometimes these tend to leak. And yeah, just want to be careful. This one's a little pain to get to, but it's doable. If I was able to do it, anyone can do it. Yeah, look at that squeaky clean the power steering fluid reservoir. Squeaky clean, man. I'm gonna make a video on that, on how I ended up cleaning those up really well. And yeah, making sure all the lines are attached nice and secure, using my Harbor Freight needle nose pliers. Yes, we just put in some ATF. Make sure you use ATF. Read the cap, clearly says to run ATF. Put your cruise control box back on. As you can see, I already put it back on. Now I'm gonna focus on the valve cover. There's a bunch of tutorials online about the valve cover, and yeah, I'll also put my belt back on. Really easy to put the belt back on and clean up the valve cover where it meets to the engine. Clean it up really good with like a knife. So I forgot to record a portion of this video regarding the lift bolts. Yes, those lift bolts. Now, if you guys weren't aware, 2000 and 2002 Celica GTSs have the old style lift bolts. Yes, so these older style are known to break very easier than the 2003 and up style. The 2003 and up style are the more pointier ones, and the 2002 style are the more I guess oblong oval shape one at the end. And if you own one of those older year Celicas, chances are you are gonna have broken lift bolts. Now, let me tell you something. If your lift bolts are broken, before you start trying to drill out the piece that got stuck in there, make sure your rocker shaft did not move. Yes, your rocker shaft can move in its spot, and it can have the other piece of the bolt in a whole different place than where the bolt will go through, if that makes sense. If your lift bolt breaks, your rocker shaft can rotate, and if you're going to try and drill out that stuck bolt, the other piece, your chances are you're going to drill into that rocker shaft. So be careful about that. If you don't know, just pull out pop out the rocker shaft. I will make a whole video about this later, but this is for another episode, because I do not want this video to be very, very long. But as I said, if you're here, change those lift bolts, please. Just do yourself a favor. They cost 70 cents from Toyota each. You need to buy two. They don't sell them in sets. So do yourself the favor, replace those lift bolts. They're 10 millimeter bolts, and you torque them down to 7 foot-pound. And yeah, we're about to slap that on. We're gonna put some packing seal or seal packing right there in those two locations. That's where it needs it. And yeah, here I am grabbing it. Shout outs to Hector, who got me this a long time ago, and I'm still using it here. It's good stuff, good stuff. Just put a little dab. Don't need to put that much. Just a little bit. A little bit is fine. And yeah, make sure you close it up. Don't want to let it go dry because this stuff is kind of expensive. And here we are. Gonna put the valve cover on. It's a bit tricky to get to, but the breather tube that's right here in the front is kind of tricky to get to, but it's really simple. If you've done it a couple of times, it shouldn't be hard. And yeah, just fishing it in, positioning it, and now we're gonna put all the 10 millimeter bolts. Those are all torqued down to 10. The 10 millimeter ones are all torqued down to 8 foot-pound. And yeah, just make sure everything is secured. They're all 10 millimeter, even the two nuts for the breather tube. Yeah, make sure everything's back in place. Don't want to leave anything loose. Double check your work. Go back if you have to. And here I am attaching the coil pack, I guess wiring, and putting back the hoses onto the valve cover. I always get the same question asked. Even in Instagram, I get a lot of DMs. Hey Seabass, what oil do you use in the 2ZZ and what oil filter you use? Well, to answer that question, I've been using Mobil 1 almost my whole life in the automotive industry, I guess, or whenever I do oil changes for my cars. Even in my sister's and dad's Matrix XR, still use Mobil 1, and I only use Toyota brand oil filters. And here's the thing, here's the funny thing, they actually started selling Toyota oil filters at Walmart. Yeah, but the sad part is they only carry 1ZZ oil filters and not 2ZZ oil filters. Yeah, you can use a 1ZZ oil filter in a 2ZZ, but I mean, if you're going to be ordering these gaskets from Toyota Parts Deal, as in my other video, you might as well just buy the oil filter from them. I think it's about $3 the oil filter, so just stock up. That way you don't have to order any in a long time. So yeah, Mobil 1 and a Toyota OEM filter is what I always use, and I had nothing but success with them. In order to properly bleed the 2ZZ-GE on a Celica, you have to take off this 10 millimeter bolt that is holding on to the coolant reservoir. And what you want to do is, there's like a little opening on the bottom of the reservoir so that you can place it on the latch or on the hook where your hood latch goes, and you put it there, and that's where you want to leave it to properly bleed it. What I've been using for a while now is this Valvoline antifreeze. You can pick it up at Walmart for $12 a gallon. It is really cheap stuff. Same with the Valvoline Synchro Mesh. Pick them up at O'Reilly's for $10 each bottle. These things, I use them in my personal Celica GTS and Corolla XRS, and I haven't had any issues with them whatsoever. Really reliable stuff. One thing I want you guys to make sure you've done, and I want you guys to make an actual checklist for this. Make sure you release the timing chain tensioner. Yes, once it's already back into the 2ZZ, you need to make sure the hook is released so that the plunger can fully extend out. Once you release it, you would want to turn the crank by hand with like a ratchet and make sure that it's spinning freely and with a bit of tension on the chain. You want to do this before putting the valve cover back on, but if you didn't, just when you're about to release the hook for the plunger, make sure you rotate it counterclockwise just a little bit. You will hear the click from the hook releasing, and once you hear that click, then you rotate it clockwise a couple of times. You're gonna struggle a bit because that's your pistons are going up and down and they're creating compression, so it's gonna be a little bit hard to do, but it should be fine. Just please make sure you guys do that before starting the 2ZZ, or you will bend the valve. Yes, you will bend the valve. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You will bend the valve if that timing chain tensioner is not released, because you will skip timing and chances are your chain's gonna skip teeth from the cams. So please, please. And yeah, after you put oil in it, make sure you prime your engine as well. You don't want to start a dry 2ZZ. Make sure oil's all the way up into the valve cover or into the valve head and whatnot, the head of the engine, and just throughout the whole engine. So it's nighttime. My birds have finally quieted down a lot significantly, and I just got done putting gear fluid in the transmission, synchro mesh, Valvoline. That's the stuff I use. It's like amazing. That stuff is amazing, and it's super cheap. Go pick it up at O'Reilly's for $10 a bottle. And if you guys don't know, this is the proper procedure to bleed the cooling system for the 2ZZ. You got to put it on top of the engine latch, and I have already tested the engine. I already started up. I made sure it's all fine. It is actually Saturday, so when I was doing the video, it was Tuesday, and so I already know the engine works and everything's running fine. Everything sounds good on it. Battery is most likely dead, so I'm gonna go get my jumper. But procedures to before you start the engine, you for sure want to disconnect your fuel injectors to prime the engine. So when you put the oil in it, you want to disconnect your fuel injectors and prime it at least like 10 seconds to make sure that you have oil all the way to the top.